June 14, 1998. Salt Lake City. 5.2 seconds on the clock, Chicago down by 1, and Michael Jordan is holding the basketball with the entire planet holding its breath. Everyone remembers the shot. The crossover. The pose. The sixth ring. What nobody talks about is what happened next. Because the man who had just hit the most famous shot in basketball history was about to vanish for 3 years, smoke cigars, sip whiskey, gamble like the money was going out of style, and then, weeks before turning 40, Michael Jordan walked back into the NBA. And the real story of that comeback is nothing like the highlight reel playing in your head. To understand why Jordan ever came back, rewind to that night in Utah. Chicago had no business being in trouble. 5 titles in 7 seasons. A dynasty. But inside the building, general manager Jerry Krause had already decided the dynasty had an expiration date. Krause, the architect who drafted Scottie Pippen and built a 5-time champion, wanted a divorce. Phil Jackson was coaching his final game no matter the result. Pippen was as good as gone. So when the clock wound down in Game 6 with the Bulls trailing, everybody in that arena felt it. This might be the last time anyone ever saw Michael Jordan on a basketball court. Then came the steal on Karl Malone. Then came the crossover on Brian Russell. Then came the shot, the pose, ring number 6. And then, nothing. Jordan retired for the second time in January of 1999. But here is where the story gets strange. This was not Jordan's first goodbye. Fans had watched Jordan walk away once before, in 1993, only to return with 2 of the most famous words in sports history, "I'm back." So the speculation never really died. And the rumors caught fire when Phil Jackson took the Los Angeles Lakers job before the 1999-2000 season. The greatest player alive, the greatest coach alive, may be reuniting in Hollywood. When Jordan showed up courtside at a Lakers game in late 1999, the league practically lost its mind. But the crazy part? The speculation was right, just aimed at the wrong city. Jordan was coming back to the NBA. Not to Los Angeles. Not to Chicago. Jordan was headed to the Washington Wizards, one of the most irrelevant franchises in professional sports, and not as a player. In January of 2000, majority owner Abe Pollin handed the 36-year-old the keys to the entire organization, team president and minority owner. Remember that name. Abe Pollin. Because by the end of this story, Pollin's handshake is going to matter more than any jump shot Jordan ever took. On paper, running a franchise sounded perfect for Jordan. The most competitive human on earth now got to compete from a luxury suite. Except there was one problem. Jordan could not stay off the practice court. The president of the franchise was in the gym every single day, sweating with the players, mentoring a young guard named Richard Hamilton, talking trash, teaching footwork, correcting stances. Front office executives do not do that. Front office executives do not wake up before sunrise to run drills with 22-year-olds. The itch was already there. Everyone in the building could see it. Jordan just refused to say it out loud. First, though, Jordan had a franchise to fix. The 2000-2001 Wizards were a mess, and Jordan acted like a man holding a demolition contract. Out went Juwan Howard. Gone was veteran Rod Strickland. Washington pivoted hard toward youth and bottomed out completely. 19 wins. One of the ugliest seasons in franchise history. But the disaster came with a silver lining, the number 1 pick in the 2001 draft. Jordan used it on a high school phenom named Kwame Brown, the first high school player ever taken first overall. History has not been kind to that decision. But that summer, something far more important than any draft pick was happening inside the Wizards' practice facility. Jordan was playing again. All those hours mentoring Hamilton had planted a seed. Every pickup run, every drill, every film session, Jordan was testing the body without ever admitting Jordan was testing the body. The final push came from an unlikely place, the NHL. Mario Lemieux, a hockey legend, had returned to the ice late in his career and thrived. If Lemieux could do it, why couldn't the most competitive man alive? Jordan even brought in Doug Collins, the coach from Jordan's early Chicago years, to run the bench. And then, in the fall of 2001, after 3 years away and nearly 39 years old, Michael Jordan made the announcement that stunned the sports world. Jordan was coming back. As a player. For the Washington Wizards. The reaction was not celebration. It was confusion. What was the point? Jordan had 6 rings, 5 MVPs, and a legacy carved in stone. Coming back meant risking all of it. Critics sharpened their knives immediately. One bad season and the myth becomes a punchline. Air Jordan becomes Floor Jordan. And the first glimpse of the new Jordan did not exactly silence the doubters. In Jordan's first preseason game, wearing that strange blue Wizards uniform, something looked off. The explosion was gone. This was a man who once took off from the free throw line, and now the lift simply was not there anymore. 3 years of retirement and the early stages of brutal knee tendinitis had stolen it. But buried inside that game was a clue about what this comeback would actually become. Because while the athleticism had vanished, something else had quietly taken its place. Watch the preseason game against New Jersey. The Wizards fell behind by nearly 20 points early in the second quarter, in front of a home crowd seeing Jordan for the first time. And Jordan, playing essentially on one leg, started hunting. No more dunking over 7-footers. Instead, fakes. Jab steps. Pump fakes that sent defenders flying past like traffic cones. Footwork out of a textbook nobody else had ever read. Jordan rebuilt the entire offensive game around the mid-range jumper and pure basketball IQ, and dragged the Wizards all the way back into that game before Doug Collins mercifully shut Jordan down to preserve the comeback for nights that actually counted. Oh, and one more detail almost nobody mentions. There was a reason people wondered whether Jordan could still shoot at all. During retirement, while enjoying one of those victory cigars, Jordan sliced through a tendon in the right index finger with a cigar cutter. The shooting hand. Jordan privately questioned whether the jumper would ever feel right again. That freak accident hung over the entire comeback like a curse nobody wanted to say out loud. The regular season opened at Madison Square Garden, Jordan's favorite arena on earth. First official game as a Wizard, first real bucket of the second comeback, and a game that went down to the wire, down 3, 20 seconds left, the severed tendon, the rebuilt jumper, all of it riding on one possession. Washington lost that night. But 2 nights later in Atlanta, Jordan answered every question at once. Early in the game, the 38-year-old got loose and threw down an in-game dunk that sent the Hawks' own crowd into disbelief. Then came a vintage up-and-under layup straight out of 1991. Final line, 31 points and the first win of the Wizards era. The obituary writers went quiet. For about a week. Because here came the collapse nobody likes to remember. The shot stopped falling, 37% from the field, ugly by any standard, horrifying by Jordan's. The Wizards dropped 5 straight, and the talking heads declared the whole experiment a failure. Then it got worse. In Jordan's first game against Utah since burying the franchise with that 1998 shot, the Jazz threw multiple defenders at Jordan all night, and even with Jordan cooking the Utah defense possession after possession, the Wizards still lost. By the end of November, Washington had dropped 8 consecutive games. 8. The longest losing streak of Jordan's entire career. Doug Collins had no answers. The playoffs were a fantasy. The legacy was bleeding out on national television, and every critic who predicted disaster was collecting the receipts. So how did Jordan respond to the darkest stretch of a Hall of Fame career? The way Jordan always responded. By finding someone to destroy. Enter Allen Iverson, the reigning MVP, walking into Washington in December of 2001. Jordan went at the crown immediately. Footwork, fakes, that rebuilt mid-range game working overtime. 30 points. First Wizards win in weeks. And that one night flipped the entire season. Over the next 12 games, Washington won 10. The franchise that lost 8 straight was suddenly 2 games above .500, and the playoff dream was alive again. Then came the night that belongs on every Jordan highlight tape ever made, and somehow never is. Late December. The Indiana Pacers in town. Jordan, 38 years old, one bad knee, coming off the worst shooting stretch of Jordan's life, detonated for 51 points. 51. The oldest player in NBA history to score 50 in a game. But the truly unhinged part came the very next night against the New Jersey Nets. Jordan scored the jersey number, 23 points, in the first half alone, including 22 consecutive points without a single miss. Back-to-back nights, 51, then 45. From rock bottom to torching the league in 72 hours. That is not nostalgia. That is a 38-year-old on one leg terrorizing a league full of players half Jordan's age. January rolled in and the hits kept coming. Jordan's first game against the old Bulls in Chicago, a homecoming wrapped in a knife fight, delivered the 30,000th point of Jordan's career, only the 4th player ever to reach it. But scoring was only half the story. People forget, Jordan won Defensive Player of the Year back in 1988, the same season Jordan won MVP. And even without the old burst, the strength and the defensive IQ never left. Jordan turned the Wizards into one of the better defensive teams in the league that season while still carrying the offense. By the end of January, the numbers were absurd, 25 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists a night, and a 25-20 record for a franchise that won 19 games the year before. Washington was heading to the playoffs. Jordan was heading to the All-Star game. The comeback was working. And then the knee gave out. In the final game before the All-Star break, the tendonitis that Jordan had been quietly fighting all season became impossible to hide. True to form, Jordan played through the pain, showed up at the All-Star game days later, and kept going. But eventually the body stopped negotiating. Knee surgery. The season hanging by a thread. Jordan fought back 11 games later and dropped 34 points in 26 minutes against Milwaukee, literally on one leg, but the damage was done. Without Jordan, the Wizards slid down the standings and missed the playoffs entirely. The final tally for year 1 of the comeback, 18 more wins than the previous season, 1 shredded knee, and one giant question hanging over everything. Would Jordan even play again? The answer was yes, with conditions. Still functioning as the team's general manager, Jordan traded away the young guard Jordan had personally mentored, Richard Hamilton, for All-Star Jerry Stackhouse, brought in Larry Hughes, and reunited with old enforcer Charles Oakley. And then Jordan made one thing official, the 2002-2003 season would be the last. Absolutely final. No more comebacks. And strangely, that decision brought Jordan peace. The 1998 exit never came with a farewell tour. This one would. Every road arena, one last time. But nothing about Jordan's final season came easy. Jordan started the year coming off the bench, the greatest player of all time, a reserve, while the knee healed and the critics circled. Then came the night everyone circled on the calendar, Jordan versus Kobe Bryant, mentor against mentor, the past against the future. Jordan opened by scoring right over Kobe, and the duel raged all night. But late in the game, Jordan missed 2 crucial free throws, the Lakers stole a 1-point lead, and with 2.9 seconds left the ball went to Jordan for the win. The shot missed. Weeks later against Philadelphia, back in the starting lineup, Jordan got another chance with 5.4 seconds to play. Another miss. Washington fell to 6-10, and the whispers grew deafening. The near 40-year-old could not carry a franchise anymore. The farewell tour was becoming a funeral. So Jordan changed everything again. Against Milwaukee, facing rising scorer Michael Redd, Jordan stripped the game down to its bones. No hero ball. Just movement without the basketball, drawn fouls, one-dribble pull-ups in the mid-range. Simple. Surgical. 25 points and a win. A week later, in the only career matchup against old partner Scottie Pippen, Jordan kept the form going. But the wins refused to follow. 2 wins in 5 games. 4 games under .500. Outside the playoff picture. Jordan was weeks from turning 40, and the sensible move was obvious: hang it up, head back upstairs, protect the legend. Sensible was never in the vocabulary. In Atlanta, with the season slipping away, Jordan went back to the oldest fuel in the tank, taking everything personally. 30 points, a game-sealing layup, and a must-win on the road. The very next night against Memphis, 33 more. Jordan's fakes were still sending grown men the wrong direction, and the Wizards had their first real win streak in months. But Washington entered 2003 at 15-17, and the math was brutal. If the playoffs were happening, Jordan needed another gear at 40 years old. Against old rival Reggie Miller and the Pacers, Jordan found it. After a quiet first half, the second half erupted, including a dunk all over 6'11" Jermaine O'Neal that had no business existing on a 40-year-old's knees. Then in double overtime, Jordan scored the 2 crucial buckets that sealed it, finishing with 41. 41 points in double overtime. At 40. 18 points a night over the next 5 games dragged Washington to a true .500 record for the first time all season. Then came Orlando, where Grant Hill, playing on an ankle that should have ended Hill's season, insisted on guarding Jordan one last time. Jordan answered with 32 and another win. Above .500 for the first time all year. But the cruel rhythm of that season never stopped. The Wizards slid back to 4 games under, including a hollow 11-point night in Jordan's final game at the United Center in Chicago. Then, with Jerry Stackhouse and Larry Hughes both out against Charlotte, weeks from turning 40, Jordan unloaded one of the great forgotten scoring nights in NBA history. Jumpers from behind the backboard. Pull-ups with hands in the face. Layups through traffic. 45 points, and even the announcers stopped pretending they understood what they were watching. February 17, 2003. Jordan turned 40. The All-Star game belonged to Jordan. Vince Carter surrendered the starting spot out of respect, and the night turned into a passing of the torch duel with Kobe that people still argue about today. But after the break, reality returned. Washington kept losing. Jordan dragged the 40-year-old body into battle against New Jersey, then Houston, where after missing the game winner in regulation, Jordan answered in overtime with an absurd N1 over 7'5" Yao Ming and the defensive stand that saved the win. The body kept sending invoices, back spasms ended a game in Toronto early, and even a 39-point masterpiece against the Knicks in March ended in defeat. The final math, 21 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists a night at 40 years old, playing all 82 games. All 82. And still, Washington missed the playoffs. April 16, 2003. Philadelphia. The final buzzer of Michael Jordan's playing career. 15 seasons. 6 rings. A standing ovation that felt less like goodbye and more like the closing of an era the sport would never see again. But the story does not end there, because of the name from the beginning. Abe Pollin. Before the comeback, Jordan and Pollin had what Jordan believed was a verbal agreement. Once the playing days ended, Jordan would return as team president and keep the minority ownership stake. 2 years of sold-out arenas, of relevance, of dragging a forgotten franchise into the spotlight, and weeks after the final game, Pollin called Jordan into a meeting and fired Jordan. No presidency. No stake. No thank you tour. The man who returned to save the franchise walked out of the building with nothing. So here is the question the comeback leaves behind. Jordan never won another ring in Washington, never even reached the playoffs. But Jordan also took a 19-win franchise to the edge of the postseason on one leg, dropped 51 at 38, scored 41 in double overtime at 40, and played all 82 games in the final season. Was the Washington chapter a stain on the legacy, or was it actually the most impressive proof of it? And the bigger what if, if Phil Jackson had stayed in 1999, would ring number 7 have happened, and would Jordan have ever needed Washington at all? Drop the answer in the comments. And if you think Jordan's comeback was wild, wait until you hear about the teammate who partied in Las Vegas before playoff games, stayed up all night with celebrities, and still dominated the floor the next day. The Dennis Rodman story is on your screen right now. Click it. Trust the recommendation. That one is even crazier. And about that Kwame Brown pick, the story has a darker echo now. Jordan chose a teenager straight out of high school with the first overall selection, then spent the next 2 years practicing against that teenager with the same merciless intensity Jordan once aimed at Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. Teammates later described practices where Jordan dismantled the young center's confidence play by play. Some called it mentorship. Others called it the exact reason the most physically gifted prospect of that draft class never recovered. Either way, it revealed something essential about this entire chapter: Jordan never came back to be anyone's friend. Jordan came back because losing, in any form, on any stage, in any jersey, was physically unbearable. That obsession built the 6 rings in Chicago. In Washington, that same obsession nearly willed a broken roster into the playoffs, and it also burned bridges that never got rebuilt. That tension, between genius and the cost of genius, is the real story of the comeback nobody wanted to remember. Consider the context that made it all so improbable. This was not a tune-up league. The early 2000s NBA was young, fast, and brutal, Kobe entering the prime, Iverson scoring titles, Garnett, Duncan, Carter, McGrady. Into that league walked a man who had spent 3 years in boardrooms and on golf courses, whose knees required ice baths just to practice, whose vertical leap had been repossessed by time. And night after night, against defenders who grew up with Jordan posters on the bedroom wall, the old man kept finding ways to 30 points. The scouting report on Jordan at 40 was identical to the scouting report at 28. You know exactly what is coming: the pivot, the shoulder fake, the fall away, and you still cannot stop it. The game had changed around Jordan. So Jordan changed the game Jordan played. That is the detail the highlight tapes never capture. The Chicago years were about rising above the defense. The Washington years were about outthinking it. Every jab step was a chess move. Every pump fake was a bluff from a man who had spent retirement reading opponents at card tables. The athleticism was gone, so the weapon became information: 15 seasons of defensive tendencies, angles, and habits, compressed into half-second decisions that younger, faster, healthier players kept on losing.